All right, joining me today is Sterling Chin, Senior Developer Advocate at Postman. Sterling, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Great to have you. So we're going to talk a bunch about APIs, maybe a little bit about artificial intelligence, maybe a little bit about Legos, maybe a little bit about Ryan Reynolds. We got a lot of topics to cover today. But before we do that, I know before you got into your current job, you were a teacher. So I have a question for you. Is it easier to teach children, students, or, as a developer advocate, not necessarily a teacher, but, you're always teaching, if you will, adults, or at least advocating and usually teaching us something. So which group is more difficult to teach?
Oh, adults.
That's that's what I thought. But now tell me why. And I want to see if my reason is why.
Mm-hmm. So I taught third grade. So I was in elementary school, and there's a love and there's a thirst that the kids have at that age that they're like, oh yeah, this is great. Like you're teaching, and there's kind of like that hero worship, if you will. So as a teacher, I remember my favorite teachers. They were always, I learned so much from them. The problem with adults, I don't say the problem, is that as we get older, we get a little bit more set in our ways, and we're less absorbent to new information. And it's why this, like, the last couple of years has been absolutely insane for me watching artificial intelligence come up. There's so many people. Like, I have one of my really good friends, developer for like 30 years, told me, he's like, I don't use AI. And so me trying to teach to that, where like I'm not even going to touch it, is vastly different from, it's like, I didn't even know this existed. Tell me everything you can know about it. So for the kids love it. Kids learn and absorb. Adults, sometimes they come with their own life experience and their own lens, and they're not necessarily ready to learn, or it's harder to learn because they come from a different lens. Like they've got all their different life experiences. So teaching to adults is not vastly more difficult, but it is more difficult.
Wow, you are very politically correct in your answer there. I like it. I think that's all right. Don't worry. No one's voting. There's no one going to hold you accountable for this. But it's funny, as you were talking about it, as I was thinking about this question, I was thinking to myself, it probably would be easier to teach children just because of the lack of preconceived ideas and trying to, because I think as adults, at least I do this, and maybe wrong, is you're trying to always kind of pattern match. Oh, I've seen this before. It's like this. It's like that, like you're saying, or I've seen this before, and I don't think it's worth my time, right? Whereas, certainly at that age, right? I think anyone that has children that age, like kids come home and they're like, Dad, have you ever heard of dinosaurs? I mean, they're just like, it's all new, right? They just have no idea, and you're just introducing brand new things to them, and they come home and like, you're not going to believe this. I just learned about this thing, and that's I think maybe one of the joys of being a parent is just like it's all new to them. They have no preconceived ideas. Most of them are just sponges. They're always listening. So maybe they're harder to keep in seats, but when they're listening, I bet you they like more of the information gets in. Whereas adults probably politely sit and maybe tune you out. So maybe that's the hard part. So, well, good. That's fantastic. Well, how long were you a teacher for?
Not long, actually. It was only a couple years, and I realized that for myself, as much as I loved it, I think there was a greater calling. And it sounds weird, but so the other thing is, my best friend was teaching before me. Him and I graduated college, or he graduated college a couple years before I did. And when we were both sitting there, and I saw him go through all of the stuff that he, all the angst and all the things that he was trying to, the politics and everything. And it was, for me, I watched him go through it and struggled. And he said, you know what? I love teaching. He's like, I'm going to go, but he's like, this doesn't fit us. And so I saw the same patterns in myself. I'm like, I think there's something better. There's something out there. He's actually gone on to be a teacher, or he's gone on to be director of education at various aquariums. And that's been extremely fulfilling for him. Now, for me, I'm sitting in the same kind of situation where I'm teaching developers, and yes, I politically said, or it was a little bit more diplomatic there, that they're harder, but this is a space that I'm passionate about and I love. And so for me, being able to be there and speaking at conferences, talking to people like you, interacting with so many amazing people, and just hearing all the different stories, and kind of like we share war stories. Like, when's the last time you took down prod? Like, I remember sitting at a dinner table, it was a couple years ago, before I came to Postman and started going to DevRel, that I remember late night, like sitting at the dinner table, sitting at my dining room table on these calls. I'm like, I remember the last time that I didn't take down prod. Someone else on my team
Right.
took down prod, and we were struggling trying to get it all up. So it, yeah, it's so for me teaching. It was only a couple of years before I realized I think there's something more for me.
I like it. Well, you found it. Your true calling was APIs. I think that's what it was, right? The world of APIs. So, why don't you tell us? So, give us the quick background. So, you were teaching for a while. So,
Yep.
how'd you get into technology, and then more importantly, how'd you get to Postman and your love of APIs? Give us your quick history there.
So, other than teaching, after I left teaching, I became a product manager or project manager. The other thing I've been is I'm a builder. I've been a builder my entire life. So I picked up building, kind of doing some construction side projects, as a teacher. Again, teachers don't make enough money, and that's one of the aspects of why I left. And so on the side, I was building homes, and I was building, I was flipping homes and that. And so it got me a love of building and construction. Fun fact is I found my way into the movie industry for a short period and started building sets for people in movies. That led me down to another path, and eventually I ended up as a project manager flipping homes for an investment company. And I flipped like 1,200 homes in a year, all around the nation. This was right after the 2008, 2009 crisis and the subsequent years. And I got to know the developers really, really well on those teams. And some of the guys were like, yeah, we're college dropouts, or we're high school dropouts. Like, we just know how to do this. And they're making developer money, more than I was making. And so I kind of looked at it and said, something's not right here. I think I can do this.
Right.
And it all came to a head in 2016, when I was, excuse me, when I was tasked by the company I was working for at the time to work with a developer that we had hired a contractor to rebuild our website. And it was a WordPress website. And I'm watching this woman do this work, and I knew how much we were paying her. And I realized very quickly, I'm like, wait, I'm following along. I know that you just sent her to div. Like, I now knew what a div was just by osmosis. Being a teacher, you're always learning, right?
Yeah.
And so I watched it and went, I'm paying you this much and I could follow along. I'm like, I know what you're doing. So after that, this was kind of in the heyday of when dev boot camps were in like doing a good job. And I actually dropped out. I sold my house, moved into my in-laws basement. I had one kid, another child on the way, and we took a gamble, and I went to a great place, a great school at the time, was called Dev Mountain. I think they're still around. I don't know. And I went to a dev boot camp, and that led me into the world of tech. And I think it's weird when people look at me like, oh, you did construction, you did all these things. There's not a big difference between the mindset of someone who's building in construction with their hands versus someone who's building websites and other things in software. So that's how I ended up doing that. That's not the short story. I apologize.
That's all right.
And then fast forward, I was a software engineer, became tech lead, became an engineering manager. Postman came calling. I helped lead the labs team here at Postman, which was our R&D arm. And then now I'm in dev advocacy. The funny story is the only reason why I was not actively looking for a job at the time but the recruiter sent me an email and it said something Postman. I thought there was a problem with my Postman account.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a Postman fanboy for 10 years. And I thought, what are they calling me for? Something's wrong with my Postman account. So I
They
answered
tracked you
the email
down via LinkedIn. They're like, you're the problem. You broke it.
So that's how I got at Postman. That's how I got here
Yeah.
to Postman. And
Well, a couple of things that jump out is like, I think, you have a cool story there, like a little bit different, but you hear a lot of it. Like, I think, the thing is like builder, right? You just like, you're someone that likes to build, right? Like a lot of people, we won't go into it now, but like I see a bunch of Legos and like people that just like to construct things, right? I think they often gravitate towards like software, like, cause you are, to your point, you're building. And of course, APIs are like the building blocks, right? Oftentimes as well. So, but, and I think too, the other thing is, many great developer advocates come from originally users of the product. Like many of the people listening to the show have followed this. Like, I love this product. I use this product. Insert like a million of them, like PagerDuty or, Kubernetes, any of those. Like, those are the people that often become like great developer advocates of it. So I think you went through that. So for those that maybe don't know what Postman is, give us just the quick level set. So as we kind of go through the conversation, everyone knows what it is, and give us a sense of, maybe you can give us a sense of how many people use Postman. That was a little fact I learned that was surprising to me. So give us a little intro there about Postman.
yeah, so Postman is a developer platform for APIs. And it's a collaborative platform which allows you to build your APIs in within a team's workspace, or within a workspace that can be collaborative on your team. It has expanded since it first started as a Chrome extension. We now have over 40 million active developers on our platform. So we are the one of the major tools inside of any developer's toolkit is Postman, which is also fun to kind of brag about.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Like, somebody did some math. They said I don't, again, I don't know if these numbers are true. So you can fact check away, everyone. But someone said there are probably somewhere on the order of like 40 million developers in the world. I don't, again, is that true? I don't know. But that was kind of an interesting idea. It's like, yeah, somehow, in theory, somehow you've touched all of them, whether they know it or not, which is like an interesting fact. So I don't know. So email me in, anyone on the show, listen to the show, or find us in Slack if I'm wrong. Maybe just send me the real numbers if that is one. But I was surprised. Like, I knew of Postman, but 40 million is kind of a staggering amount. Like, you think of like social, you start to get into like social networks and like, just, I don't know, massive things. So credit to Postman. So, all right. So in the spirit of maybe being a good teacher here, this is what I thought we'd do. I thought we maybe like do a little dessert first, and then we'll tell people a little bit more about Postman, because one of the things, we were both out at PostCon last week. You were speaking. I was, eating the free food. So, take for that what it is. But one of the themes that I kind of took, and maybe as I sort of thought about the conference, like, what did I take away from it? What was the main thing? Is I thought this line here about is you can't do AI without APIs. And I thought, like, that is, I had not really thought about it that way. So maybe why don't you take that, expand on what that means to you and why you and Postman are such strong believers in that.
Yeah. Oh, this is a talk that I've given this same talk. I wrote the original talk, which I gave last year on you can't do AI without APIs. And over the last 2 years, the big thing with everyone in tech is AI. AI. And I think we've kind of hit we're starting to pass the toy phase of this. When we first started, when AI came out, it's great at generating things, and it's great at writing code, and it's getting better at all these things. As we're seeing more and more tools come available, as we're seeing, more stronger AIs come available. Last year, back in November, Anthropic released MCP, and it kind of has slowly started to grow. And then in March, OpenAI adopted it, and that was the end of March. And then beginning of April, Sundar Pichai from Google said they're adopting it. So now you've got the big three who've all said they're adopting MCP. Well, with one of the three capabilities of MCP is tool calling. Well, a tool is a fancy word. I don't know whoever made this, whoever made this up. But a tool call is nothing more than an API call or you're writing some type of function. You're running some code.
Right.
So now your AIs can actually use the APIs that you have built. And I'm not talking just external APIs. They're also internal APIs that are really like that can really benefit from those insights. So now more than ever, you really can't do AI without those APIs. Your AI is only going to be good at what it's been trained on. But and I think the number there is that I think I can't remember. Was it Ilya Sutskever? I botched his name. I'm sorry.
We all know who he is, though. The
Yeah.
former Open API researcher, and now he's on to his other new company. But we know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I think he said that we've exhausted the entire internet.
We're done.
I mean,
we found the end. Yes.
If they have created every, if these AIs are being trained on just the rest of the internet, what is missing? And that the iceberg is the tip of the iceberg is the internet, and the under the water, which is much larger, is all of our data. It's our company's data. It's our personal information. It's our personal data. And so now our other APIs that we're building are really, those are what's going to get connected to API or to AIs, and it's going to make AI just explode. I love the idea I love what the future of AI and where it's going.
Yeah.
In the next
I think,
5-10 years.
I think you said it well there. And the thing that, the number one complaint about AI usually is something like it hallucinates, it makes things up, it can be inaccurate, all of those. I mean, that's all true. I'm not saying that's not true, but the thing that I was kind of, struck with was sort of like, well, an API is deterministic. So we're going to talk about MCP in more detail here a little bit later, but that's the idea, is like when you sort of bring these together, right? Where it's like, I would like to interact with the tool, or in this case, an API, through natural language. But as long as as long as I ask this deterministic thing, like, what's the rate for the hotel? What's the rate for the airfare? Like, I know if that tool is interacting with it, that is going to be deterministic. Now, maybe the language it returns it to me will be slightly different. Maybe it'll say, sometimes it'll be like, the hotel rate is $400. And maybe next time it'd be like, Brandon, great. Like sometimes it's excited. It'd be like, Brandon, you'll be excited to find out the hotel rate is $400. So the fact that text changes is like, fine. Right. And that's kind of what I want AI to interact with me in the appropriate tone. So, AI, you do that, but just, go ask this thing for the rate or whatever it is you're trying to do. And I think, like, to me, that is exciting, right? Because as much as like we all like to write code, we also like to just interact with things through natural language. So I think that was pretty good. So hopefully that was a compelling reason for everyone to kind of like, maybe we've always thought about APIs, but like, to me, it's sort of like, yeah, they really are the linchpin to artificial intelligence, or AI, as we think about going forward. So with that as a backdrop, maybe we should spend a minute and talk about, like, well, I wouldn't say I've ever done this, but maybe some other people, like, you kind of have an idea for an API, you hack something together, maybe even use AI to like spit some stuff out, and you throw up like an API definition, like on a wiki, or even worse, you just email it to some people you're working with, and and maybe people start using it. So maybe we should start with, like, why is that not good? One, which is probably self-evident, but two, maybe you can talk through what Postman can kind of do to help us, with my little scenario there. How can we make that a little bit better for everybody?
Oh, we can't just make it a little bit better. We'll make it a lot better.
I think so. I think you have a lot of ideas there.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I think we're in the point in this industry that AI is going to be creating a lot for us. And those, maybe you've got an open API spec and you're asking AI to make it for you, like Claude or GPT or Gemini. But that's only one part of the entire process. You want to share and collaborate with the rest of the people on your team, because if you're a sole proprietor, if you're sole entrepreneur and you're building your own stuff, you can do whatever you want. But we've all worked for large companies, and I mean, large or small, you have to and eventually start collaborating with somebody. So here's where Postman steps in. Instead of having to email and getting all of that, you can put that into Postman's spec hub. You can copy and paste that, or you can build the API right in Postman spec hub. Or you can, like I said, or you can bring your existing APIs. And from there, you can collaborate as a team. So I can take that spec that I've got, I can take that API, I can create a complete collection with saved examples. And now with my team, I can collaborate off of that. I can say, hey, Brandon, hey, Joe, hey, Sarah, this is the API that we're working on. And now here's one of my hot takes. I really don't like the term full stack developer.
Right.
And so what I will say is your backend team is building your APIs. Like they're the ones who are like, here's the data sources, here's our databases, whatever we're doing, this is the APIs. Your front end teams are actually the ones who are integrating with it, whatever they're doing there. And so you have this natural break. Well, you have to have some type of tool that crosses between front end teams and back end teams. And that's where Postman, in this case, fits in. Now, I'll do you one better. Not only do we have the spec hub, but we have version control. And now we just announced that we have connections to GitHub. So we can version control right into your repo, or your repo can version control right into Postman, back and forth. We've got Slack integrations, and if you're living in a lesser Stone Age, we've got Microsoft Teams. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
Shots fired. I like it. No, I don't think.
I
I
know.
don't think anyone's gonna. I don't think that's the least controversial thing you said. Go on.
So we have all those integrations. So now, when you make something, let's say I'm changing, or let's say Brandon, you're on my team and you're changing the API. Not only could we have the conversation where right there on the spec, hey, this part of the spec doesn't make sense. You have your comments there, but then you can also send a notification to the entire team. Most of us are still remote. We're not working in an office. And so I can't just go over to you and tap on your shoulder and say, hey, I updated the spec. It's now there. Like now that notification can come through Slack or heaven forbid, Microsoft Teams. Now the other part of this is with Spec Hub. Now that we've got your collections, you've got your mock servers, you've got Postbot, which is going to be deprecated soon. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, which is one of our new products that's coming out here very soon. That is, we can write your API tests for you, and we can connect all of this to your CI/CD pipeline. All of that is done in one fell swoop, and within a collaborative environment. So now everyone on my team has it. We can make the docs. Specifically, when I talk about you can't do AI without APIs, one of the things I talk about in my talks all the time is being able to discover your internal services. And you've got a large team. So you have one team that has your team workspace, and now you have other teams who have their workspaces that have their APIs. Let's say, not every team works in silos. I would venture to say no one team works in its own silo. You eventually have to go integrate with someone else's services. Those services, I hope they're not just building it in Google Docs or email, but if they're all working on Postman, now that is discoverable within your own company's ecosystem, and you build an entire API ecosystem that is discoverable, that is, and then the documentation is there. As if I'm integrating with another team, their tests are there. I can verify that whatever I'm making, or maybe I'm not. The other fact is, maybe you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe that API already exists.
That's right. Better yet, someone's already done the work. And I think this harkens back to that famous Google rant by some Googler about talking about the only thing Amazon did that better with Google was that basically they made everyone sort of communicate via APIs, right? Everything was a service. So I think that all comes back. And I even think, Joe, just to put some specific examples, I always think it's so it's not just the spec, but it's sort of it's you said this returns a string, but what does that mean? Should this be a type, or what strings do you mean? What are you expecting? And I think having a place where that can be hashed out really quick, right? Because there's nothing worse than okay, the API just returns, I mean, God forbid, when it just returns like an object, it's something else, right? You have no idea what it is. Well, at least you can start hash it out. And even if, maybe you advocate for a change for the API, and maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, but just putting the example, right? If someone just writes the example, like, here's the way to use it. It's going to return, failed, pass, whatever, right? It's going to return an emoji, whatever it's going to do. It's like, well, at least I kind of know, right? And maybe that's a good API, maybe it isn't. But the fact that it's like, I mean, again, just the basics sometimes, right? So
Yeah.
it can be overly simple. So
Well,
you were
actually,
kind of talking. Go ahead.
one thing you touched on that we released earlier this year is typed collections. So typed collections inside of Postman. If you're not familiar with what a collection is, it's just a collection of API requests. You can have a typed request, which then we ensure that whatever you send through is typed. So we're stronger. Like you can have an error that comes back that says this is expecting a like an X like an X type API key, or this is auth token or bear token, or even the body that you're sending is supposed to be a object with a string and an integer. So you can actually strongly type your collections now to ensure that when anyone is using it, they know exactly what to expect.
Right. And even better, too. You can throw an error message that hopefully is like descriptive, right? Like, was expecting this, right? And that's what we all want, versus like, although then we get into the whole strongly type, weakly type. We don't want those people. I don't want those people to come at me. It's like, I don't know. I'm a strongly type guy, but whatever. You do you, whatever you want. So I get, and I think, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I felt like, kind of like just like at the show, I don't know if I have a strong opinion here, but I felt like there are maybe like two camps here. There's sort of like, do you start with the API spec or do you start with like code, right? And I don't know, like when you're is there a right way, or is this more like kind of what we were talking about before? Is there just preference? Like, how do people do it?
Postman talks about being API first. And
so would that be like spec first, or would that be code for like, so you say like write the spec first and then
spec first.
Okay.
And then the code comes later. I think it's not really a hot take on this, but here's my personal opinion on this is I'm kind of like you with the strong typing versus weak typing. You do you. Now, I prefer to have a spec written out and know exactly what my API is going to do, because then there's no question. That spec is always going to have, because you can put saved examples in the spec, right? This is my 200. This is my 200. Okay, here's my 404. Here's all my 400 errors. Here's my 500 errors. You can put that in the spec and be very descriptive and prescriptive on what is going to go in there. And I think that for me is when when as a team you're deciding this is what this endpoints are going to be. That's where I prefer to go. I think that's the better way. I understand there are people who are going to go code first. I think there's a difference is if I'm here, going back to my teachers, my teacher years. If you have the context, right? If I'm teaching someone brand new, I'm going to say go spec first. 100%. 100% of the time, you're brand new to coding, learn how to read a spec and learn how to write a spec. If you've got 20 years of experience under your belt and you can confidently write the code and the spec follows and know that you've got that ingrained experience with you, then by all means, go code first if you already know that spec is in your head, right? Because I think there's a difference. If you have the idea of what you know that spec is going to be, you could theoretically go back and write it. Mm-hmm. But the other aspect of that is it's just like documentation. Not a single person out here, not a single one of your listeners is going to tell you that docs aren't important. But I guarantee that majority of your listeners and majority of Postman users, docs are a secondary thought. And so if you do docs first or if you do spec first, I think it makes it easier in the long run.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And so Spec Hub is really I mean, to state the obvious, Spec Hub is the place to define the spec, right? I mean, that's the
Yep.
core component of that. So, and then you mentioned collections, right? Which is sort of like, okay, now we've got it all figured out, right? We've written, and we can, if you will, publish all of our APIs to everyone. They can see where they are. Now, the other thing that that I didn't really kind of know as much about is sort of like, it goes even further than that, right? So it's not so much like we just have like a static website, right? We have this idea that we can mock stuff, right, inside the tool. So maybe talk about like, what does it mean in this case to mock an API, and like what can I do, if you will, I don't call it live, but what can I do inside the tool to kind of like see what the API is doing? Because I like this part. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I love mock servers. It's one of the things that I think is so valuable for, and I'm gonna shout out to my front end devs out there. I spent years as a front end dev, so that's where my bread and butter was always at. Mock servers changes everything for me. Is being able to take my spec and my collection and whatever is you don't have it on the screen, and people who are listening, if you're familiar with your collection, you have your request, and then you can have a saved request underneath. So you can have a saved example. Sorry, a saved example. I can turn that collection into a mock server with an endpoint, with a URL. As a front end engineer, I don't have to go to some random JSON file that I made because I've done this enough times,
Right.
where I said, "Oh, well, this is what the API should be returning." So I have to come up with a random file in my repo that's got a JSON file, and those are the ones that me and the other feds on my team we would pass back and forth. Feds, by the way, front end developers. I don't know how ubiquitous that term is. I always called us a fed, like the Fed Guild. Mock servers allow you to, in real time, hit that API. It gives you a real-time API. And so that collection, if I go and change that saved example, and this is one of the things I love showing, is, I do this at conferences, I do this on stage. One of the things I love to show is I go in and change that saved example, and in the code itself, like my front end, I'm building the UI for it, and I just go hit that API again, and that change is immediate. So now in a collaborative environment, if my backend team is building that API and they're like, "Oh, well, no, the saved example is going to change," instead of having to ask, like, "Oh, well, what's that?" As a front end engineer, what's that? What's the new response going to look like? It's like, no, you just hit it. It's there. It's in the saved example, and you could now immediately use it on the mock server. And the mock servers are so easy. I forget how easy it is to set up a mock server because it's one or two clicks. I mean, at this point now, you right click on, or you go to the mock server tab inside of Postman and just click the workspace, or select the collection you want to make as a mock server. And now it's there. Whatever request you have in that collection is there with an endpoint. And that also means that any of the auth that you've got associated with it is already there as well. So if you have in your auth tab, I mean, let's say you've got a bearer token and you get request, that mock server is going to have all of that there. It's so easy. It one or two, like, I think it's 2 clicks and you're at a mock server. I wish I had this when I was a engineer.
Well, I think that's I think this is a big thing, because I mean, I think there's lots of ways to use it, right? Obviously, you can just use it for like some testing and stuff like that. But I think it's just one of these like learn by doing or learn by example. Again, like probably people like to learn, back to our teaching conversation, a lot of different ways. But like, I think the quicker, because I think what you were saying is what most people do. Like, you're trying out a new API, right? Maybe like me, like you write like some Python and you try to stub it out, and you're just trying to get a sense of like all the things said, like, okay, can I access it right? Did I get to access stuff right? Do I have the right token? Whatever it is, God forbid, do I have to do OAuth? It's just like that whole nightmare. And then it's like, okay, like what exactly does it give me back? Oh, is it giving it back? I've read the API, but I want to see it. And so instead of like having to, like, if you will, do all of that on your own, it's just like, I can start immediately playing with it. And I just think that sort of like accelerates the learning curve, right? It's just like, oh, I can start to see what it is, and I can start to learn it. So I think, so it's sort of like, to me, it's sort of like all of this whole process of like, hey, if I wrote the spec correctly, right? And I got that done. And then I got it good. And then I put it in collections. And now people can actually start clicking around and using it, right? All of that to me is like that whole cycle of getting things out into the world is so much faster. That's the part that I guess that to me like really speaks to me. And also like now I can actually learn about it. So maybe talk a little bit about too, like maybe give an example of some of your larger customers, right? I mean, they use it as a way to like advertise what they're doing, right? So like, so you kind of, if you will, you can maybe talk about how does that collections and Postman help me advertise all the great work I've done to my organization or for my organization?
Yeah, some of the we had this. So every year, Postman releases the state of the API report, and we've been doing this for years. And one of the stats that I love is that 75% of companies make money off of their APIs in some way or another. But so we know that your APIs are making money. The bigger stat is that 21% of companies, their APIs drive about 3/4 or more of their revenue. So the APIs that themselves are extremely important. Let's look at PayPal, for instance. PayPal has got, they are a payment integrations platform. Everything you do is API. So to answer your question, you have a public, so Postman has the largest publicly available network of API network out there. So we have over 100,000 publicly available APIs on our public API network. And if you are a publisher, if you are exposing your APIs to external integrators, then you can publish it verified, publish on the, I'm going to call it PAN because it's public API network. We call it PAN internally. So you can publish it on the PAN and get the verified check mark that shows like we have a verified publishers checklist that we go through to make sure that this is the right API. And so PayPal, when they come through, and Discord and Stripe and CoinGecko and all these major publishers are out there, they have that verified check mark because they meet our standard of what is a good quality API. And not only is it a good API, but it's also able to integrate quickly with. I think PayPal is under a minute, as they're saying, is like that's what they brag about. And we have verified numbers. Like it takes less than a minute to integrate their API. When you make that developer experience inside of Postman, we can help you get your APIs in front of the customers that you're looking for, that you're hoping to have.
Yeah. Well, I think, in a way to contrast it is like, I think we've all been to a website where like maybe they give you like a PDF of an API, right? And it's like, okay, that's nice, but that's kind of a pain, right? So now all the things we would talk through, it's like, okay, it's a collection, it's a website. I can go see the examples. I can mock it. It's just like, it's just, if you will, ready to go. So I think that's sort of the power of, and that's why I think, so many people have gravitated towards publishing on Postman. And maybe we should talk at least a moment about, I think one of the announcements you guys made too was about GitHub. What do you want to say about that? What was the announcement there?
Well, actually, let me take one step back. One of the
Go
best
ahead.
parts about publishing is if someone has a open API spec, imagine if you have an open API spec, you can import that into Postman and turn that into a collection. You can bring that into the spec hub, turn that into a collection. Now you've got all of everything that their spec is. So that also is hugely popular with developers and publishers. Okay, GitHub. We announced that we have bidirectional connection to GitHub. So your APIs obviously going to have to live in code somewhere, right? Like when I use my APIs, they're going to live in a repo that is version controlled. So Postman made the announcement. We've been working hard on this for the last year. Now, not only any change you make inside of Postman can turn into a PR into your repo, and you can branch inside of Postman, and those branches will live again both on Postman and in GitHub. So you're not having to go back and forth between your IDE and GitHub or Postman. Now it's all living in Postman. So now you can rapidly iterate on your APIs, your spec, and your collections, and you can have it on a branch on its own. You can branch off of it, push a PR to it. Your team can submit a PR to that off of the branch, and you can do all the commits inside of Postman, and they're also reflected inside of GitHub and vice versa. So I can start a pull request in GitHub and approve it and edit it, like specifically around your APIs, obviously, inside of Postman. And so it is that bidirectional. I'm really excited about this one. I love the GitHub team. I've worked with some of them over there, and we've chatted quite a bit about how popular this feature is going to be.
Well, I agree, and it's collaborate where you want to, right? If you're a GitHub person, you're over there. If you're in Postman, it's over here. So go where the people are. So I think that's why everyone's excited about it. So okay, so hopefully now I think we all understand why we should not follow Brandon's process of just send your API over email and all the benefits. But we kind of opened this conversation a little bit about AI, and you mentioned about MCP. So let's dive into that, because I think MCP is really, really popular now, at least amongst this audience. Although, as we learned, not everyone had heard about it at your conference. So first, give us a quick description, just so everyone level sets. What is MCP, right? And then two, how does Postman, how can I, if you will, work with an MCP with Postman?
Okay, great. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It is the connector between AI and APIs. So tool calling. It has 3 capabilities: resources, prompts, and tools. That's tools and APIs and functions. Okay. MCP is what I'm really excited about, because that's where I can actually get AI to do work for me, right? The example I share, and the example I shared on stage, was my son is in 5th grade, and for any parents out there, you get that weekly newsletter, and it's 20 pages long because the teachers want to add all this thing, and it's all the fluff. And don't get me wrong, I love what the teachers do, but I only want to make sure that my calendar is up to date. So I created an MCP server that was in Claude, that was connected to my work calendar and my personal calendar. And the only thing I did is I dropped that PDF in, and I said, can you make sure everything is on my calendar? And the PDF, or the AI Claude in this case, was able to go and update everything. I think that's the extreme power of MCP. And additionally, I think we're still in the infant stages of what this protocol and what the impact is going to be on the AI industry as a whole. Everywhere I go, when I ask people how many people are building with MCP, or how many people have heard of MCP, I'm starting to see more and more, greater than 50% of the audience is saying, yeah, we've heard of MCP. But when I ask the same question, if how many of you have actually built and or use an MCP server, and this number has not changed, which is also surprising, is that it's only about 5% of the audience. So in a room of 100 people, 5 people will raise their hand and say, yeah, I built an MCP server, or I've used an MCP server. So I think there's still a lot of learning, and that's what I'm on here for.
Right.
Is,
and we should go back and talk about, because I saw that demo you did is really right. And in this case, the tool, or the MCP server that you're talking to, was Google Calendar, right? And so that's sort of like, if you will, that was the deterministic part. You're like, I actually want this to be, I want the calendar to put it on a certain time. And if you will, the AI part, right, or the LLM part, was like, figure out what are all the dates, what, which when is the bake off, or whatever it is happening at your school. So I thought I thought that was pretty impressive. And I'll also say, I felt like this was immediately something that was monetizable. You should sell this. Everyone always does the AI examples about restaurants and making reservations. Honestly, I don't make that many reservations. Now I get a lot of school emails though. So I think that's the place to really focus in on, is automating school emails. There's a huge market out there. I believe it. So
I agree. And if you break that down even further, when you think about what's actually happening under the hood, the LLM had to read the PDF. It had, so this is this is where the power of LLMs and the deterministic side of APIs. And this is what I want. When it responded to me, it said, hey, I saw that that 4 out of this, there were 6 events, 4 are on your calendar, 2 are not. I went and added them onto your calendar. And the other thing is I have in Claude, I say, make sure that anytime I do this, add an event on my work calendar as well, because I work from home. So I want to be able to
Absolutely.
attend my
Yep.
kids' stuff. So it's like, no, I want to make sure that my team I have blocked out time, and there's travel time between the school and home for all of that. It's extremely powerful. And any parent who's got over and over like the emails, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, after the show, we'll launch our business, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so but to get back here, so okay, so how does Postman? So okay, I got an API. We'll just
Yep.
call it, for something good. Maybe it's not as good as scheduling the parent thing, but something even better that people want. Whatever people are. Okay, so I'm sitting here. I have an API. What can Postman do to help me create this MCP server for me?
Oh, so much. So we have there's a couple new tools that we've released recently. I'm going to call them by what I use them as, but we have an MCP generator. I love when we call that MCP builder. We have the MCP client, which allows you to test and use your MCP servers in the Postman ecosystem. And fun fact, you can also collaborate with your team on them. So I'll talk about that. We also have the way to test AI LLMs directly inside of Postman through the AI protocol. So first off, the MCP builder. We recognize that one of the things that people are trying to do with MCP is they want to integrate with APIs. Well, APIs live on the Postman public API network. So the team went out and immediately, one of the first things they did with MCP Builder is you can go to any one of the APIs on our public API network, and you can click on it and choose which tools or which requests you want to be part of the MCP server, and auto generate it for you.
Right.
One click.
And I think that's the magic. Go on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and once it's done, you click. So I'll call out Stripe this time. PayPal's got theirs up there as well, but I'll call out Stripe. That's all. You can just point and click and choose what you want out of those APIs, and then build that MCP server. It will download the zip file onto your computer. All you have to do at that point is unzip it, run npm installs, because there's obviously going to be some dependencies there, and then you're off to the races. You find it, you can pull that right back into Postman and check that it's running in the MCP client. And that MCP client is similar to what you're used to inside of Postman, the way it looks, but I can grab it either a standard in out or streaming HTTP. So if I have a URL somewhere, let's say someone else has a URL somewhere, that's their MCP server, you can import that into Postman as well, and it's all there. I can connect to my MCP server. I'll immediately see on the left side the tools that I have available, the prompts I have available, the resources I have available, and once it's connected, I can start to run and say, okay, this is the API that I want to hit. This is the tool call I want. Boom, boom, boom. Adjust, change any of the parameters, hit run, and it will go to your MCP server that's like on your computer, in this case, the one that we built, and it will come and it will respond as if the LLM was getting that response. It's extremely powerful. The other thing I failed to mention is that we just released the MCP directory. So if you go to getmcp.dev, so that's getmcp.dev. So getmcp.dev.
And we'll put the link in the show notes. So everyone, you don't have to remember all that. We'll make sure we click on it.
That'll go to our new directory that we're opening up. And that is similar to our public API network, where it's publishers can go on and you can publish your APIs there. The MCP directory, we're getting to a point where you can publish your MCP servers and have them publicly available.
Yeah, so I think it is pretty impressive, and I think that's something that's come up quite a bit in the software defined talk Slack. It's like, where's who has the MCPs, which ones are right. There's a lot of different directories out there. So the fact that you guys kind of building on your success of APIs, right? It seems like a logical place for you to go. And also too, it's like what you're saying before is I think maybe people have like kind of played with an MCP, maybe they've used one, but the fact that like, if you have an API, like you're very close to having an MCP, you're ready, right? I mean, you don't have to do much more. And like all of us, I think when you start putting it out there, people will do some interesting things. Now, as we sort of like wind down here, because I know we can go all day, but we're gonna run out of time. But I did want to touch on a little bit around flows, right? So sort of give us a little bit about like maybe I'm someone that doesn't necessarily want to code everything by hand, don't want to write all the Python stuff. So tell me how flows can help me interact with some of these APIs and what I can do with it.
Yeah. So we talk about how I said earlier in the show that we've got 40 million developers on our platform, but we also have to recognize that some of those developers are maybe not developers. They may be product managers. They may be the people on our teams who are non-technical or less technical, right?
Testers is another one that came up a lot.
Testers,
I heard people
QA.
talking about QA. Yep.
Yeah. So Flows is a open canvas that allows you to interact with your APIs and build API workflows inside of just a drag and drop canvas. So you get a response that comes off of, you can drag something onto the canvas, and Flows allows you to go block by block, build an entire workflow inside of that canvas. And so if you're a tester, for instance, you know that API 1, like your authenticate, or let's say your new sign up, you're going to go to the sign up API. Now I'm going to add more content here. What happens if the spelling is wrong? What happens, how does this work? You're testing it, but now you can visually see that workflow happen inside of Postman Flows. And the Flows team just released the ability to deploy your flow as a flow action. And one thing I didn't show you, I don't think I showed it on one of my talks, was the ability to turn, because that's now an endpoint. That flow, whatever you put in the start block and the end block on that flow,
right? Because essentially,
becomes essentially like an API.
Yeah.
So whatever happens inside of it, let's say I'm taking a couple of my internal services and I'm going to modify some data. I want to pull some information out. I can trigger it and then let that flow run, and then it outputs the response, which is just an HTTP response. I love using that inside of an MCP server, for instance. Going back to my love of MCP, is anything I change in there is directly reflected inside of my MCP server. So Flows allows you to make these agentic workflows, or just just a workflow itself. Maybe there's not even an AI connected to it. Allows you to map out in a visual way your entire workflow and the journey of the data through your application. So it's a very, very powerful tool that those who are those of us who are developers, I find it extremely powerful to build full agentic workflows and then just ship it, and then my MCP server can call it. But if you're non-technical or you're a product manager, one of the other use cases is that we have product managers who are saying, look, here's the APIs. They know the APIs exist. They're using Postman. So then they drag and drop their APIs onto the canvas and say, here's the flow of the APIs. Here's how it should work. And they're non-technical, but they can explain it to developers, and they can build a flow inside of Flows that is more deterministic and can help developers visualize, say, oh, I see what you're talking about here. It's
just for everyone. I mean, just to make it overly simple, this is like you get a nice canvas, like I don't know, like Figma, like Visio, I don't know, pick your favorite tool, and it's just kind of like, I mean, you just drag and drop the arrows, and then you just tell it like, okay, this goes to here, this goes to here, and so like you said before, I think it's really, like you said, it's you could obviously do all this in code if you're inclined to do it, you could write the code, but I think for the people that either don't want to, or like I think a lot of the people that it's just faster, like even yourself, right? Sometimes it's faster just to click this together and have a little workflow ready to go. So I thought that it was pretty impressive. So that's another thing that everyone should check out. And again, back to like if you get your API inside of Postman, you get it in a collection, you start to get all these bonus things. I call them like the bonus features. Now I can make an MCP server. Now I can use flows. Now I can publicize it. So all of that is very impressive. Now, I don't want to finish this podcast without kind of getting to the big announcement. So we've talked all about AI, right? And about how we can interface with AI, but maybe you can tell us, what did Postman offer now, if you will, utilizing AI? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the big announcement that was made at PostCon was agent mode. Agent mode inside of Postman is on its way. Now, the demonstrations you saw, if you go back, Postman is going to be releasing those demos here soon. But if you've used Postman in the last couple of years, we had something called PostBot, and PostBot was our AI assistant inside of Postman that would help you along your way. We are deprecating that and shipping agent mode. Now, agent mode is going to be if you've used Cursor, if you've used VS Code with Copilot or any of the Microsoft Copilot or any coding assistant. This is an agent inside. So inside of Postman, it knows you. It knows how bad of a coder I am. It knows how bad of a developer I am.
Right.
And I have my dangling commas everywhere and everything. It can go through, and because agent mode is going to be agent mode is so powerful that it will help you clean up your spec, but it will also take action on your behalf. So it's going to help you build your APIs. It's going to help you build your collections, your API tests, your documentation. And we're releasing it internally. More and more of the product teams they're already working. Most, if not all, the product teams are already building that into like agent mode into their products. But there's going to be so much more that
Right.
the agent is going to be able to do for you, like
Yeah,
observability.
and I thought it was really similar to like I mean the kind of what I saw is sort of like it has kind of a chat interface on the right side. I thought it was very similar to Cursor. That's my favorite, one of the
Yeah.
IDEs. So it's a very similar thing, right? It's like, build this for me, do this for you, and then it just sort of like, like it's like, oh, it's the AI magic. It just like happens inside of Postman. So, I mean, I wonder. It's sort of like as I was watching this, is like I was like maybe everyone like agent mode should be in every product everywhere. I'm always like, where's the agent mode for Word? Where's agent mode for PowerPoint? Where's agent mode for like for everything? So I think it was again, it's very impressive. I mean, again, but it's one of those things where it's sort of like it's not magic, but it feels like magic, right? You just sort of like ask it, and then stuff just starts happening. In this case, in the Postman interface. So did I get all that right? Is that a good way to summarize
well,
it?
it feels like magic, but when you really think about it, APIs are very deterministic. There's only a handful of ways. If you're using HTTP, if you're using gRPC, GraphQL, MQTT, WebSockets, Socket.io, any one of the multiple protocols, they're very clearly, here's how you do it. And so that we can let the AI help you with that. And so agent mode is going to help you with that. I'm really excited to see more and more people get on it. We're releasing it to enterprises early, or we're going to have early access open up soon for enterprises. So any of your listeners, if you're a current enterprise customer of Postman and you're interested in getting early access to agent mode, please let me know. I'm sure Brandon, you'll share my.
We'll share all that stuff. We'll put some links in there, however we can get it there. So, all right.
But there's amazing stuff coming. This is just the very, very beginning. I'm in the next year, you're going to see some more cool stuff coming out.
Nice. I love it. Well, it's going to be fun to watch. So listen, we've talked a lot about APIs. We've talked a lot about AI. We've talked about MCPs, but I thought, we should end this where you've got a nice sense of like, back to where we started, like maybe somebody out there, their company, they have a little API sprawl. Not everything's going well. They've got a lot of work to do. I thought you offered up like if you will, kind of a very pragmatic, like a week one, month one, quarter one, like where to start, where to try to get to. You don't have to do all of this in one day. So why don't you give us some practical advice? If I need to kind of get started, what should I be doing?
You start off with, in your first week, you pick your three most your most valuable APIs. And that could be internal or externally facing APIs. It could be the service that runs all of your business logic internally, or it could be, the one API that hundreds of thousands of developers using, or, you start with three APIs. That's it. And in that first week, you're going to, run it through an open API spec check, put it in Postman Spec Hub and see if it has all of the information it needs. Fill that in, add the 200 examples, add the 400, add the 500 examples, add the documentation, add the tests to it. Start with those three APIs. And you're going to also check who are the consumers of that API. Is it externally? Are those external devs? Are they internal devs? Now we have to think, are they machines? Is an AI going to be consuming this? Because that is also going to determine, maybe the future of that API. Maybe you need to go look at, look at changing the data spec, or, the protocol that you're using. Start with the three first APIs. You're going to start to get an idea of the landscape that you're dealing with. Then after that first week, we're going to look into your first month. And month one is all about creating a template. You're going to create one of my favorite people I met at PostCon. He talked about your API style guide. You're going to build into that template. Every week, you're going to take the first three, then you're going to take three the next week. So now you've got 6 after week 2. You've got 9 after week 3, and after week 4, you've got 12 APIs that at that point, you're going to keep going after your most valuable API. So at that point, you should have a pretty clear idea of what your whole landscape is going to look like. And so you can create a style guide, you can create templates around it. So I always say after the end of month 1, you should be able to confidently say all new APIs follow this template. And then anytime we're not going to change all of your existing APIs, those will come anytime. So then all new APIs built after the first month should follow this template. And you're going to have clear documentation, a documentation format, a testing format. So writing your tests, you're going to have an API spec test, on there. All of that's going to exist on all new APIs moving forward. And then anytime you touch an existing API, now you go back through and try to build in time to update that spec. So sometimes you've got an older HTTP request that you have to, maybe that spec doesn't exist. Now it's time to say, hey, let's take 15 minutes or 20 minutes and let agent mode in Postman help you with it. Because by the time you get to month 1, at the end of month 1, you're going to have agent mode available in Postman, and it can help you build, take those existing APIs that you're touching now and fix those. And then by the end of quarter 1, so this is all building on top of each one. At the end of the first month, you're going to continue building. So by the time you're done at the end of the quarter 1, so that's 3 months. If you simply just hit 3 a week, you look at what that's going to be. You're looking at 60. I'm really bad at math. AI should help me with this one. That's 12 after the first month. 12 times 3, so that's 36 APIs. Wow, right. I'm really bad. I was off by 14.
It's okay. There's no one's gonna fact check you. Go on.
But at that point, by the time you're done with the quarter, that snowball is going to start rolling, and now you're changing the developer your developer your not your ecosystem, but your culture at your
the culture.
Yeah, like now it's like, no, every API that's net new API is going to be in Postman. We're going to do all this. But the best part about that is if you're using Postman, and you've got your team workspaces, and you're on the private API network. We haven't even touched that. When you start to build that ecosystem internally inside of Postman, now your APIs are searchable, they are discoverable by other teams, and now anytime someone else is integrating with you, now you're building an entire directory of your APIs inside of Postman. So hopefully by the end of quarter 1, you've got a really solid fix on probably at this point, 75% of your most important APIs will have been touched within that quarter.
Mhm.
You know, if you're in fintech and you've got an old, you know, SOAP, Kotlin, you know, API down there, you probably don't touch that maybe except maybe once a year. But hopefully by the end of that quarter, you and your company have got a really clear outline of where you're moving and you've built that ecosystem.
I like it. All right. Well, listen, everyone has their marching orders. You've got a whole plan there. You got, week 1, month 1, quarter 1, you get started with your APIs. No excuses not to get it all cleaned up. Now, if someone wants to get started with Postman, what should they do? Should go visit the website? Anything specific you would recommend? I know there's lots of labs on Postman as well.
Oh, it really depends on where you want to start. If you've been living under a rock and a developer and living under a rock, you've never heard of Postman, then just go to postman.com and you'll be able to sign up. If you're inside of Postman already, if you're already using Postman, just know that there are so many more tools, and we have a full learning center. The Postbot that currently exists and soon agent mode will also, as that starts to come online, you're going to be able to ask for help, and you're going to have a Postman expert at your side inside of Postman. There's workshops. So we have full certifications. You have Postman certifications. If you're going to PostCon next year, the day before the actual event, we do workshops. We have 8-hour workshops. If you're a large enterprise, if you've got multiple, that hundreds or thousands of engineers, we can actually come on site, or we can help you with workshops. You can go through the workshop certification. So there are so many ways of learning more about Postman. We are revamping our video creation. So if I'm shooting a lot of video now. We're redoing. So as new features come out, we hope to have YouTube videos, how-to videos, but also, teaser guides like, hey, here's a teaser. This is coming out. Here's how you play with it. So we have an entire ecosystem. I'm going to reuse that word. We have an entire ecosystem of information. You can go to a Postman's Learning Center, Postman's Work, like all of it. We've got it all. So
all right, it's out there.
Last thing I will say.
Go ahead. Links in the show notes. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
The last one is, if I don't say this, my community team will come after me.
Okay.
We just opened up our Discord server.
There you go.
So we have a Discord server we've got, and that is massive. I'm in there. We talk about MCP. There's challenges. There's get to know yous, or get to know Postman in there. All the links, I'll share them all over to you.
Okay, we'll make sure that everything's available in the show notes. Now, if someone wants to get a hold of you personally, what's the best way? What social platforms have you embraced?
Well, if you go to sterlingchin.com, so STERLINGCHIN.com, you'll have all my socials are there. And you can see that. I'm on LinkedIn primarily. That is my primary source. I also am starting my own TikTok and YouTube channels called Sterling Talks Tech. That's where I talk about my experience outside of Postman. But Postman's also got their YouTube channels. Yeah, so sterlingchin.com. You'll see all of my socials are there.
We'll have links in all the show notes. They can find you, and it sounds like they should find you in your new Discord server. So there you go. So that's plenty to. Now, I also will say this: like, if you're at a conference where maybe Sterling's speaking, maybe he isn't. Like, if you're lucky enough, hopefully he'll be wearing the greatest tech shirt I've seen in a long time, and it is Run MCP in the logos. It looks very similar to Run DMC. I hope we're not dating ourselves. I hope people know who this is, but it's an homage, if we will, to that. So it's a fantastic t-shirt. In fact, I think I know you I don't know, maybe a little side hustle. I'll just put a link. I'll put a link specifically so everyone can see the Run MCP shirt. So if you see, I think it's one of one. I haven't seen anyone else wear it. So most likely, if you're at a show and you see someone reading a Run MCP shirt, that's likely Sterling. So that's the easy way to find him. So, all right. Well, Sterling, this has been great. I've learned a lot. Hopefully the listeners have learned a lot. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so very much. This has been an absolute blast. I hope this is not the last time.
Yeah, well, I doubt it will be the last time. There's always things happening in the API world. But for everyone else, if this is the first time you've ever listened to Software Defined Talk, then welcome. You can subscribe by going to www.softwaredefinedtalk.com. There you can join the Slack. You can follow us on social media. And if you want a Software Defined Talk sticker, all you have to do is send me your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. And with that, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.